Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Professor Ogunsakin, let me pick you up on that question again. You talked about lack of synergy between the various security agencies, which by and large has taken away to a large extent the need to have that intelligence that they can share and ensure that people are safer. What must be done then in that regard to try to see that if the intelligence is not gotten, if there is no synergy, then the people will suffer at the end? What can we do?
One of the bits we can do, and actually, as you say, we are doing it now, is setting up that interagency committee, consultative committee on election security. And what that has produced is the fact that we've now been able to bring all the security agencies together. This happened during the Ekiti election. It happened during the Osun election. And I believe that is something that is happening right now. For instance, 2 weeks ago, I was in Maiduguri looking at, we had a election security conference where all the players were invited. This was sponsored by a Nigerian policing program. And what we were able to judge within our groups and the public at that point was they were able to discuss how to coordinate the election. And if I go back to what happened during the Osun election, what the police successfully did was able to bring all the security agencies together. And we're looking at the logistics, we look at the opportunities to look at the mapping that has already taken place. And we're looking at the vulnerable areas within the country where we realize that there might be some issues. And these are used through the intelligence gathering, because what we've been able to do now is to look back and look at the areas where we had issues during the primaries and the disgruntled individuals. And then we now look at the areas where they might be more inclined to protest, because when you look at these bits, it's not just the security agencies. We need to look at how we run the internal democracies within the parties itself. Because when you don't get on initially, it's the police and the other, security agencies that get the blame. If the electoral process works, then it will not spill over to these disgruntled individuals. And I think, secondly, what we have to start looking at is the fact that after those people who are disgruntled or who feel that there's no fairness in the system, then it goes to election. And after the election, the post-election violence is something that in the past we have not been able to put a good handle on. But I believe that the present system and the Inspector General of Police is doing its best with the limited funding that the police is getting.
I'm wondering, and let me ask Mr. Ejiofor now, because if he says that the relevant agencies have a level of synergy now, which they started with the Osun elections, do you think that in any way will counter some of those figures that has been railed out by the Joint Action Committee, who are having fears that more than 20 states, they say, will be affected by violence leading up to the 2019 general elections?
Well, I'm a realist, and I must tell you, with due respect to Professor, the structures might be on ground, but the plain truth is that there's no synergy among the security agencies. There's still this interagency rivalry, everybody trying to play politics to suit the political paymasters. And that's the greatest problem we are having. I continue to emphasize that we must not play politics with our security. If the structures this interagency consultative committee is talking about is on ground, and there's no logistics to support them, of what use is it? Mm-hmm. I don't see any need for it when you don't provide the funds. It's not peculiar to security subsector, but I must tell you that for us to develop, for us to move forward, we must provide security. That is why it's enshrined in the Constitution, Section 42(2)(b), that the primary responsibility of government is provision of security and welfare of the people. If that is lacking, then the government does not have any legitimacy. We must face the facts. The action of the police so far has constituted threat to violence. And I think the earlier they address these issues, because some of the actions of the police tend to provoke the people. Look at what happened in Ekiti, for instance. If the consultative agency was around, there was this allegation from this civil society organization, there were allegations from observers that the police played a role in scaring the people away from voting. And you know, this can lead to violence. If that happens in 2019, I'm afraid, because take for instance, that's an isolated case. You can have enough policemen to deploy. But in general election, you don't have that number to deploy. The joint action, I agree with them entirely, but we should not restrict to 20 states. But we have flash states, high-stakes states, that efforts must be put in place. I tell you, Rivers, for instance, Kano, Akwa Ibom, Delta, Bayelsa, these are states that must be looked at, very high volatile states. And the earlier our security agencies begin to address this, the better for us. And you talked about intelligence. I think the statutory role of the State Security Service is to provide intelligence and synergize with other security agencies.
But are they
what
doing
is the
that?
situation now? You recall that there was change in leadership in the State Security Service. And even though we are not going to be discussing our security or intelligence operations on the public domain, you recall that there was a time the SSS image came down and people were not given the necessary support. With this change of leadership, I want to appeal that people should now cooperate with the agencies by volunteering information. Security agencies or intelligence agencies, they are not magicians. They work with the people. And I think it's important that they give support to new leadership and see how we can move our country. This country belongs to all of us. We must be concerned by the development.
Thank you, Mr. Ejiofor. Let's bring in Professor Ogunsakin here and talk about that joint action consultation forum made up of the police, the other security agencies, and the politicians, the political parties. You said it's co-chaired by the police commissioner and the INEC resident electoral commissioner in whichever state we're talking about here now. But what happens in a situation where the commissioner is changed? We have some information coming in now that some of those states have not been able to have that meeting because of the rate at which commissioners are brought in and removed. How would that work?
The type of setup we have within the Nigerian police force is the fact that it's called Nigerian Police Force, and people can be moved, officers can be moved and for operational reasons. And again, we cannot sit here and be discussing why people get moved. And when you look at a group of senior officers, that some of them are due for retirement, those things will happen just by natural means of people retiring, it will happen. But we are not just limited to those states. This interagency security, consultative security for election takes place in all the states, where the commissioners are co-sharing the security meetings with the INEC commissioners for the states. But the main reason this is happening is because we've learned from the past. And the past says that if you don't learn from the past, then you're going to repeat the same mistakes in the future. And the other one is that we have a federal one that is shared by the Inspector General of Police and the INEC chairman, and again with all the security agencies. This is ongoing. Then the other one that the police have in place is the stakeholders group that involve all the community representatives, including the civil organizations, where everybody can have their own say. And in the past, it used to be that the information trickles down from the top, but it's the intelligence that the police gathers from the states, from the commands, that they use now to make decisions on deployment. The fact that we keep talking about funding, tomorrow, again, we're going back to look at the police bill, and these are issues that needs to be corrected before the election.